gents. Jake, aka Countdown Ended, coming to you once again for Into Somewhere Rivals. And that, of course, as you know, means I am not alone. I bring you my work husband, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Cody Oneidi 316.
What's going on? This is going to be a good one. I've been waiting for this episode for a while now, and this is one of my favorite rivalries of all time.
Absolutely.
Kane and Undertaker.
This is the one that made wrestling become my everything. I had always been big into, wrestling as a child and loved the bad guys, but it was the debut of the Undertaker, and my grandmother, loved Halloween, and the gothic spooky presence of him really gravitated towards me as a child. That's something that I just found very special, and it immediately captured my imagination. It engulfed my being, and the Undertaker was instantly the dead man, my favorite. And
100%. And looking back at all those things between them and Undertaker's debut, Kane's debut, I like it and I enjoy it. Going back on Peacock.
Absolutely. Going to the cock and seeing what's up. That's the thing. So you get to go back, and the age difference between you and I even shows, how different points in time grab people differently, right? But no matter what, this superstar, and subsequently later is kayfabe brother, but originally the Undertaker, has been a common source of a starting off point or a connection to wrestling for so many people for so long. Even if you were into Hulkamania or Jake the Snake Roberts or Shawn Michaels or even Stone Cold, or later on with The Rock and then Triple H and so forth, the Undertaker was always prevalent in one way, shape, or form. For 30 plus years, that man was the guy on top of the company. Even if he was in
When I got into wrestling, I always liked the Undertaker. He grabbed me right away. I'm like, I like this.
Absolutely.
I just like the physique and the presence.
He demanded and commanded
the aura, if you want to say.
His presence demanded and commanded your attention. And what it was is that even how we got into the ridiculous storylines with the early gothic and evil Undertaker, when he had the ministry formed and all that happened there, and then the corporate ministry, of course. But breaking it all down, it was the man himself that transcended wrestling, and that was difficult to do up until that point. But he got people to be interested and care about the product when it wasn't cool, so that when it really got to be cool and the it thing, everyone was running around the playground yelling "suck it" and doing crotch chops. I was there rolling my eyes like the dead man. A lot of it, it was so popular with the Attitude Era, of course, but I don't know that the Attitude Era would have been completely the same without this, because as much as we had the zany and the wild and the nuts with Stone Cold and the beer trucks and everything that happened on that side, what is wrestling but a performance, a play? It's theater. And it's
Exactly.
a different form of entertainment.
And you can make arguments what the Attitude Era, what made it really special. You can say Rock and Austin, Stone Cold and Vince, but Undertaker and Kane has a special place in the Attitude Era that sometimes gets swept under the rug, I would say.
Absolutely, swept under the pyro. Because what really sets this apart from everything else was the ability to suspend disbelief that a dead man and a burn victim that are brothers are set out for an undisputed rivalry that is going to go to the lengths of which people had never seen in wrestling. The Hell in a Cell, the Infernos, they pushed the envelope as much as they could. But as you had the physicality and the raw and the ability to gravitate towards Vince and Austin being like, that's the everyman. That's everybody hates their boss. Everybody wants to defy authority and look in the eyes of the man and tell him to F off. We want to go ahead and grab our boss and kick him in the balls and tell him, go yourself, But
I do that to you every show, though.
Yeah.
Stone Cold taught me to do
He did. He did.
Daniel Bryan,
You tend to
Okay.
shit the bed on that one, but we go ahead and we saw the Undertaker and Kane have a story, like an actual story. They were embalming people and kidnapping people and doing sacrifices and all this crazy stuff about their brotherhood and setting their homes on fire. And we'll get into the explanation, but the point is, it was kayfabe at its finest. It was a real, true, genuine wrestling story in a time where realism and blurring the lines and crash TV and making the reality type featured entertainment was such a focal point and in the forefront of everyone's conscious mind. This made people believe in wrestling again. The Undertaker allowed people to bring in the fanatically, fantastical way that nerds get into it, and we got to live and breathe and everything wrestling. And this really just added a whole nother dimension. Everything was trying to push the envelope and be real on one side. So it was nice to see the theater side be represented in such a way that it was for guys as well as girls. It wasn't like you're going to see Broadway.
A lot of people growing up watching this, they did blur the lines because a lot of people always thought that they were actual brothers, not kayfabe brothers.
Exactly. Still to this day, the number one Googled result that the search result that they have is the Undertaker and Kane are they actually brothers? Is it true? And it's so amusing to see how that lives on till today. But at the point in time when all this was going down, and the way we're handling rivals, we're not going tit for tat, match for match as we do when we go guilty or guilt-free. No, instead today we're just discussing Kane and Undertaker's rivalry. And
this is the lead up to their guilt-free episode, because there definitely will be one about them.
Yes, we have that coming
just
soon.
like your pre-show of it.
Exactly. This is the homework that you need before you go ahead and finish the final. But the way the Undertaker was established at that point in time when he passed his debut, I mean, you know what happens. You see him come in Survivor Series. It's supposed to be Kane the Undertaker, ends up just being the Undertaker. He's got Paul Bearer on his side, and it wasn't all but a year off where he's taking on Hulk Hogan and, oh, you got me, brother. The tombstone on the chair heard around the world. But we see the Undertaker is in that top spot. And whether he was going for the title or not, he had never been taken out of the main event scene. From there on out, if he was wrestling and it was middle of the card, that was still the main event. It didn't matter what the match was, where it was placed, he was the main event. And so many times, you look at WrestleMania 25 where they weren't the main event and should have been. We've seen it time and time again.
100%.
The Undertaker is the main event. His booking, his stories, his involvement, his feuds, his rivalries, no matter where he was placed on the card, no matter when you would or would not see the dead man, he was the main event. So we have this wrestling dead man, and he's putting the Ultimate Warrior in a casket. He's on WWF magazine. He's, saying that he's got everyone on notice. And by the time you get to see, the NWO start forming, and they're beating down Roddy Piper, and they're spray painting NWO on his injured hip. Again, the realism, and I did not like WCW. I was a vocal hater of it, if anything. So I always preferred the dead man. I watched Raw. I didn't switch back. But as where they were giving you an attempt at a hostile takeover and being as realistic in kayfabe as possible on that side, it seemed like the WWF was going to go full bore on the secret sauce that was kayfabe. They began really trying to push the envelope of what their typical storylines were. They got more edgy, away from PG, but they also further addressed storytelling. And gone were the days and the guys of, hey, Repo Man, and, guys with, whatever their job was, the Mountie, however they were employed.
Oh, the
That was
Mountie.
that was their
On
gimmick.
the Mountie.
And now we have people with backstories and motivations and real, again, as much as I can say that, real, natured things that you can believe in. So we see the Undertaker at this point, and he's freshly the WWF champion. The night before is WrestleMania 13, and now we see what's progressing. And Paul Bearer comes out on Raw after WrestleMania 13, and the newly crowned champion is being interviewed in the ring by Vince McMahon. And when Paul Bearer comes out, he says that, hey, I'm no longer on Mankind's side, and I'm going to ask The Undertaker to take me back as his manager. And Undertaker says what? I need some time. I need a little bit to consider. So a week goes by, and we see Paul Bearer come to the ring, and he's pleading his case. You should take me back. And, you need me. We're better together. And Undertaker makes it seem like it's going to happen, but then he attacks Paul Bearer. So eventually,
Hey.
Basically, he's going to beat him down, and he's going to take him out. But during the attack, Mankind comes out, Mick Foley, and he surprises The Undertaker. And this is where he threw the fireball in his face. This is the March 31st, 1997 episode of Raw is War. And basically, you see that, hey, this was the plan all along. Paul Bearer embraces Mankind. This was the trick. And Mankind's going to be facing The Undertaker for the WWF title at the In Your House pay-per-view. And when Mankind's interviewed, we kind of get the motivation saying that I'm going to get revenge. And this is where we start to hear and get little tidbits, ever so slight. It's not happening yet, but we're hearing Paul Bearer make slight mentions of a brother, and it's all surrounding around fire. We see the fireball injure Undertaker's right eye, the one that Kane threw, and Undertaker, in retaliation, roughs up Paul Bearer and throws a fireball in his face. So gets Mankind out and gets Paul Bearer out of the way. So Paul Bearer is out for quite some bit after the heinous burning attack. And Mankind interferes in a match between Undertaker and Triple H. He's carrying a blowtorch. He beats down the Undertaker, and he hits him with a big gas can. And he tries to light the torch, but the Undertaker stops it, and they fight into the crowd and disappear. Yep. And it's not long after.
It's gone.
You get the Undertaker being asked by Vince, do you feel any remorse for setting Paul Bearer on fire? Do you feel bad? And he says no. He shows no remorse or sorrow. And finally, after weeks and weeks of absence, we see Paul Bearer come out. This is now in May. This all happened in early April. So he basically comes out all bandaged up, and he's like, you've got one more chance. If you refuse, then I'm going to tell the world the secret that only you know. And we see the Undertaker on the big screen. He says that things are on the dark side that should never see.
Him a little bit.
Yeah, never should these things see the light of day. We need to keep it as such, and that's all there is to it. So, what's come to light now? What the threat is for Paul Bearer to let him know, hey, you are going to tell the world that you have a brother, and he is still alive, and it's all your fault. You two were playing with flammable liquids in the funeral home you were raised in as children, and you went off. You saw Kane messing around with the fire, but you went to go do chores, and the house caught on fire. And not only did Kane get severely, badly burnt, but their parents are gone as well. The fire consumes the family. His parents are deceased. Kane is now locked up and sequestered in a mental facility. So he's in a loony hospital, and it's a bad state. So Paul Bearer is bringing all of this to light, and it's an interesting story because they don't make the Undertaker be the good guy while he's still kind of the face. They're telling things of him being evil and destructive and a terrible person, but yet the fans are still behind him.
Yep. Stuff like Kane used to be the nicest kid ever. He was the sweetest person ever, and you changed him for the worst.
Exactly. And you have, the dichotomy between the two, light and dark, strength and weakness, and what they're trying to accomplish with the story. But it's all these heel things that he's doing. He's committing these heinous acts while being a babyface. So it's a very convoluted, but not in a bad way. It's deep. There's a lot of lore. But on the surface, it's brother versus brother, betrayal. It's easy to get into. But for those that want to know the lore and get in deep to the storylines and add more to the matches and the feuds, it was there. They were finally giving people backstories and details and, the
Keeping
betrayal.
you invested into all of this.
It wasn't just another manager turning on their ward. It was, oh my God, this is your father figure. Undertaker's life is turned upside down by this. I mean, the Phenom has the title. He just wins at Mania. You think it's going to be this big celebration, and then he's betrayed by the man that he looked up to. And now you have Paul Bearer leading new clients like Vader and Mankind, and Cornette's, of course, involved. And he's basically promising that, Kane did survive the fire. You thought he was dead. He's not. He survived. He's been in a psych ward. I've been keeping an eye on him and waiting for him to make his return. He wants revenge, and he's coming for you. I mean, truly an incredible time.
Because when Undertaker found out Kane was alive, he didn't look the happiest of people.
And it was great that he wasn't addressing it either, Cody. He wasn't going to the ring and being like, oh, my brother's alive. How did, like, he would just have these expressions on his face that showed pain and worry and concern. And that alone was enough. You didn't need to hear him say, oh shit, I'm screwed. You needed to just see the expression on his face.
He really cared for his family and all that. Undertaker, you would see more of a human side, right? Like happy that his brother's alive. It didn't seem to be that way. You could just see it in his face, like, uh-oh.
Exactly. So we go from one fateful night where the funeral home is burned to the ground by Kane accidentally. It was a mistake, and he's like, guess what? Your mother had an affair, and Kane was actually their son, and it's actually Paul Bearer's kid. So as this develops, we find out it's like Kane's still alive. He's my half child, and I kept him in the mental asylum where he was made to believe he suffered terrible burns and scars from the fire, which is why he wears a mask. And he was bounced around from different foster homes until Bearer came back into his life with an opportunity to get revenge. So Undertaker doesn't believe it. And what I love about this story is they didn't rush into it. They didn't say, hey, Kane's alive. He's coming, Undertaker. They didn't have it like they would now where next week, oh, R-Truth returned already. They could have waited and built it up and had some excitement to it like they did with this. I have a hard time arguing that this is probably not the best debut of a new character of all time. This is probably it as far as the momentum. And I mean, this is Vince's magnum opus as far as characters and debuts goes. This was perfect in every way possible.
Two of his greatest creations of all time.
Absolutely. Well, multiple creations here. So you have a great story. You have a great feud. You have everything playing out extremely well. And everybody is a factor in this. It's all important. Shawn Michaels is here. And he's been just a thorn in the Undertaker's side. He has constantly gotten under his skin and just been a impeding force to fuck over the Undertaker. Simple as that. So we go ahead and we again see this story play out in such a way where we don't know what the truth is. We don't know what's real. We know we like The Undertaker. We want to believe him and what he's saying. But, I mean, since SummerSlam 96, you know, Bear was standing by his side for 6 years until turning on him then. So, I mean, a lot of mistreatment, too, by The Undertaker. It kind of seemed like Bear was in the right at times. I mean, he was being attacked and whatnot. So there were all these interesting elements. There wasn't one clear, virtuous babyface. There wasn't one outright evil bad guy. There were shades of gray, and it was more realistic in that sense, again, using realism to their advantage, because people were liars. People were selfish. You know, there was murderers afoot. There was, you know, evil deeds done here for selfish reasons. But then there were also actions that were justified and people could understand and relate to and get behind. So a lot of this was unprecedented for the tale of what WWE was telling in terms of story. I mean,
I think in this case scenario, yeah, like you could never tell who was actually the innocent guy here. Like, I know this isn't guilt free, this is for another day, but just like
yeah,
what was being said, because the things Undertaker was accused of, he didn't deny it either.
no,
He never really accepted it. It was just a thing where he was in pain the whole time. So
yes.
you kind of felt like,
could this be
he was
legitimate? You didn't know. You didn't know.
And Paul Bearer was just trying to relay the message, and he's no athlete. And so Undertaker really just beat his ass anytime.
Exactly. And so you could just kind of side with Paul Bearer, being like, "Oh, he's getting assaulted, he's getting beat down." Like, but oh, he's warped Undertaker as a caretaker and used him to fight his battles. So it is bizarre and it's not straightforward. Flash forward to Bad Blood, 1997. Again, like I said, so many creative elements. Not only has Shawn continually gotten away and been a thorn in Taker's side, but we also have the looming discussion of Kane coming at some point. But it's been months. We haven't seen it happen. You know, we kind of think like, oh, it's bullshit at this point. It's not real. And it was just mind games for The Undertaker. Well, Bad Blood comes and we get the Hell in a Cell match, the very first. Now we have a fully enclosed cage match with a roof on top so that Shawn can't get out, he can't run away. Like, they have to face each other. So that match obviously becomes synonymous with the WWE, WWF, and how famous that, you know, whole stipulation becomes. But we see this massive structure lowered down. We get The Undertaker beating the life out of Shawn Michaels for quite some time when the lights, they go down. We hear an orchestral tune that we've never heard before. And then pyro goes off. Big shots of flame. Vince McMahon reacts. Oh, he sees Paul Bearer. And then in one of the greatest commentary calls in Vince's career, we get this line.
That's gotta be Kane! That's gotta be Kane!
That's gotta be Kane. The classic call that has been replayed and done over a million times because of the excitement, the unknown.
Fun fact, I know that was Vince McMahon that said it, but a lot of people for a long time thought it was JR that actually made that call.
Yes.
Heard a lot of people talk about that, and JR had to say it himself and clarify it that it was Vince McMahon, not him.
It was Vince.
A lot of people.
It sounded like a JR call. You know, that's gotta, the way he did it, the tone. But you see this massive man adorned in a mask and red and black leather attire. He looks like an evil supervillain straight out of Marvel. He is marching to the ring with fire exploding behind him, bathed in a full evil red light. Paul Bearer
You can argue this
menacingly
is one of the best
smiling.
debuts of all time.
Absolutely with this. So he comes down and now he's got the cage keeping him, because that was the point of this. Sean can't escape and no one can get in. No interference, no DX, no. He rips the door off the hinges, tears the cage door off, and goes in, locks eyes on the Undertaker, and that's all it took. Face to face, Undertaker does not want to fight his brother.
He was covered in a mask, makeup, and a whole body suit of some sort, and Undertaker just knew it was him, the present.
Exactly.
He just feel his presence.
What they were getting, what they were going after, and what they were trying to achieve here. Kane,
he could cover his face, but Undertaker could just read the room that that's really him.
Absolutely. He knew, he looked in his eyes, and Undertaker did not want to fight his brother. And I can't fully emphasize or state how massive this debut was. And it really, pun intended, set the wrestling world ablaze, because no one had made the Undertaker look that weak. Even giants had not done the job. You know, Hulkamania and Giant Gonzalez and Sid Vicious, and anybody you put up against him, he knocked them straight down. This was the first time where it seemed like Undertaker might have met his match, his equal, his true rival.
Or you can even argue someone that's stronger than him.
Yes. And the fact that they didn't rush this along, they let it have steps. They didn't just immediately the next night go to a match. No, HBK gets the victory here due to the interference. And now the Undertaker refuses outright to fight his brother. He doesn't want to do it. It's not what he wants. But that doesn't stop Kane. Kane costs him matches, opportunities. He does, attack after attack. He does ruses where he goes ahead and it seems like he's going to team up with him only to go ahead and attack him. He's in the dead man's mind. Rent-free, he is there. And, we even see the Undertaker try and return mind games, dressing up as Kane to fool everybody. The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels have their match at the Royal Rumble in '98. It's a casket match. And this is where Shawn actually gets injured and changes the course of his career for quite some time to come. He gets to sit home for the next 4 years, paid, millions of dollars, because WCW is still a thing and Vince doesn't want to risk it. But the Undertaker gets the loss here, and the casket's set ablaze. So what does it do? It's building towards Wrestlemania. Wrestlemania 14. We're getting the Undertaker to finally agree and face his brother. He's going to go ahead and fight him. It's gonna happen. It has to happen. And most people figured that Kane, the Undertaker, would basically end there. The Undertaker would beat his brother, and that would be it. They would because that was typically the WWE storyline. You had somebody be a big menacing heel that would come in, usually a foreign nationed one. They'd approach, threaten World War III, get destroyed, and disappear. That wasn't the case, though. Again, turning the conventional business on its head. Kane catches on, and it's not over there. It's not done yet. And we see them continuing this feud, which was very interesting the way the storyline went forward. So, like I said, we get the initial debut, and, he finally agrees to face his brother. Undertaker wins, but he hits Kane not once, not twice, but 3 tombstone pile drivers to get the job done. So Kane may lose, but it shows the strength, the dangerous power, the ability to withstand attacks and damage. I mean, this makes him seem a little bit almost even scarier in defeat than if he had won.
I would agree with that, yes.
Then we get into one of my favorites. I rented this VHS to the point where I eventually got two two VCRs to be able to copy it and keep it myself. But we go ahead and we get to Unforgiven, In Your House. And this is the 21st In Your House at that point in time. They're on pay-per-view. It's in April now, 98. And this is the first Inferno match. Even if the match didn't quite live up to everybody's expectations, which I thought it was great. As a kid, this was like the pinnacle of spectacles to me. Seeing the flames completely engulf the ring, knowing that somebody was going to be set ablaze, like you weren't going to win unless somebody caught fire. And I kept thinking like, oh, they'll find a way to get out of it and they won't actually, but they did it. It happened. And I love every aspect of this match. You see the big dives and moves as the flames rise up higher. The danger was there. All of it was just great, and the storytelling kicked off even further. It took, like I said, 3 tombstones for him to get the job done, and he ends up tombstoning his brother on a chair afterwards, which leads to this here. And the loser would be set ablaze. So we get to Kane and Bearer showing the graves of the Undertaker's parents, and he smashes the headstones and sets them on fire. Like I said, the storytelling
Such a great
was
segment. Just
so
amazing.
next level. The Undertaker goes to the crypt of his parents only to find their coffins gone, and then they're in the arena, and he sets them on fire, even though the Undertaker's trying to stop them. Like, he's setting his parents' coffins on fire in the middle of the ring on Raw. Talk about Jerry Springer, that Crash TV angles. But with the
Off
depth...
topic, this is why I wish WWE never got rid of all the old Monday Night Raws off Peacock, because you can't go back and watch this like
a lot of stuff
to.
we can't see. I love the network. The network was probably peak and best iteration of what WWE set out to...
You could just go back and watch this stuff.
You could watch it in full. You could search and queue up these things. They had it by main events and matches. All of it was great.
A lot easier to go check this stuff out.
There's a lot missing. In like if I wanted to watch all of Raw going back through 98, 99, like you have to search for them individually and find the dates, and instead of being able just to find a playlist or a curated list, or just
they removed it since they went to Netflix, but Netflix hasn't added it yet. So
exactly. So this still seems like a huge public relations nightmare and a bit of a unfair way for the fans to get the content that they pay for. But that's why a lot of this stuff meant so much to me too, because it was developing week in, week out. And I mean, there's so many little details that we're not even mentioning here, but these are the key points that mattered. We're seeing them essentially take their parents' coffins and go against each other in the middle of the ring. It's nuts. This stuff is not happening at this point in time, and here we get this Inferno match, and as I had said before, just incredible with what they're able to accomplish here. And I love the spectacle of it. You got the Undertaker just beating down on Kane for a while, but eventually they end up and you have the Undertaker walk the ropes for Old School, and the flames are shooting up, and he ends up knocking Kane out of the ring, and he tries to push him underneath the ropes, but the Undertaker delivered basically like a thumb to his eye, and it ends up where on the outside, the Undertaker gives a big boost, and Kane falls backwards onto the ring. His right arm catches a blaze and goes up, and he runs to the back. The Undertaker won. Kane was set on fire. They did it great by using the glove to be the part that gets set on fire, so it's flame retardant and protective. But as flame retardant as it was, this was not retarded. They made this thing feel about as close to torching a human being alive as you could. A lot of people, knew that this was the big selling point of the pay-per-view, and they felt like Dude Love in Austin was going to deliver, but this was what made memories. Now we just keep building. We get them in King of the Ring 98, where Kane is challenging Undertaker, Stone Cold for the title. in a first blood match, and he said if he didn't win, he'd set himself on fire. And that's where the Undertaker interferes and hits Austin with a chair and busts him open. Kane wins the title then. I mean, it just kept building and building. It was all going to Fully Loaded, where the duo were forced to team up together, and you saw Kane and Mankind team up against, Steve Austin, and it's like, oh, look, we've got this whole thing going on. So it's Undertaker and Austin taking on Kane and Mankind. I mean, just
people that you wouldn't think would team up have to team up for.
Can they coexist? That still lives today, and
can they coexist, pal?
We can't get into every beat. As we said, we'd be here for 3 years recapping moments, but things that stood out to me, you have Kane being a member of the corporation. The Undertaker has the Ministry of Darkness. So they're kind of feuding with each other. It felt like two opposite factions.
In 2014 with the Authority, that was the first time of Corporate Kane. Corporate Kane was a thing before.
Absolutely, with the corporation. That was the callback to it. We saw Kane team up with X-Pac. That was great. I really enjoyed their pairing. You had, a little and big man thing going on where the ultimate underdog and the powerhouse. And you saw the opposite of that in Big Show, and Undertaker teaming up. So you had the unholy alliance of Big Show and Undertaker feuding with X-Pac and Kane. So you had the big men versus the big and small, and there was always, no matter how they had it, it was a throughput. It was like a timeline guarantee, a foregone conclusion, if you must. Undertaker would be on one side, Kane would be on the other. Even if they teamed up, they still led, opposite factions or what. Like I said, the Ministry of Darkness and the corporation. The unholy alliance against these two. Even when they did the Brothers in Destruction stuff and teamed up as, you still had the American Badass versus different versions of Kane. But before we get too far ahead, while we're still in 98, I do want to make mention. So Judgment Day, the pay-per-view comes and it's a bit of a retcon of the story at this point. So what we knew was that Kane set the funeral home on fire by accident,
right,
and then was put in a mental asylum where he was forced to believe that the scars were covering his body and he was very badly burnt. Even though he didn't have the burns, he thought he did mentally by the abuse that was put on him by Paul Bearer and others, and the guilt of him accidentally killing who he thought then were his parents. It was his mother, but not his father. However, in a real, when I say shocking, I don't mean I mean shocking as in even a bit appalling and disgusting, but that's what they were going for. The Undertaker turns heel at this point, with the ministry stuff, and he plainly and outright openly admits that he is the one that set the fire at the funeral home. He intended to kill his parents as well as Kane. He viewed Kane as weak. He didn't think that he had any strength to him, any drive. He didn't feel like he was a real brother. The Undertaker never took this back. He never changed it. So even when the Undertaker went through the Hall of Fame and all of that, he's still a murderer that people just kind of skip over that, So the heel turn allowed him to say, I killed my parents. I tried to kill you, Kane. And even though I failed, I still scarred you for life. If not physically, then mentally. So even when they did the subsequent face turns, he got his brother committed to an asylum. He Katie victim before Katie Vic happened. And his whole life was ruined for a crime that he did not commit. He was, and I say this pun intended, as much as I can pun intend this one, he was gaslit into believing he did what he didn't. And when talking about flames in discussion, that's the ultimate gaslighting. These two, I as much as I loved seeing them fight and continue their rivalry, the part of their rivalry was them teaming up and how they eventually found ways to coexist. They were extremely dominant in the 2000s, especially especially at the point in times where they were taking on the two-man power trip of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. Fast forwarding, we're kind of jumping all over the place. Now we're more discussing memories and things that we enjoyed of the Brothers of Destruction and the rivalry that they had.
Just going over.
We will go over guilty or guilt-free in their matches and which we loved the most, which ones we hated, and was their booking good or bad? Was it guilty or guilt-free? Did WWF at the time handle the booking of the Brothers of Destruction in the best way possible? At some points in times, they were the most dominant tag team ever. And at other points, they were just kind of thrown out there as spectacles. So there's a lot to discuss. But one that always stood out to me was that, massive title change and the way it went down at Backlash 2001. Hell of a show. Often, I feel like this one gets overlooked a bit because you see, people not crazy about heel Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I think fans forget how great of a character, delusional, paranoid, unconfident, that Stone Cold was at this point in time. Him being a heel was really damn entertaining. And I think people, they didn't want to boo him then, of course. So they didn't really give it a chance. And Triple H and Stone Cold being that ultimate two-man power trip unfortunately ended prematurely when Triple H got injured and then was out. But with this, this was one hell of a match, and I loved everything that we got here. Triple H goes for a pedigree, and Undertaker breaks up the pinfall, I remember, and basically Vince interferes. He hands Triple H the sledgehammer, and Triple H hits Kane, and that lets them win. They retained the titles, and then they won the tag titles, and we want to see these two get victory, but it was weird seeing Vince team with Triple H after, it was just a great set of stories, and, there was always the chance that they were going to turn on each other, too. So you look at The Undertaker, you look at Kane, and you're like...
That's crazy.
Right? You're looking, and you're like, well, with these two, when is it going to happen? We know we got the Brothers of Destruction, but something's coming. Something's going to happen. And continually we saw this. While Kane's injured, we got Diamond Dallas Page running out as a target for Sarah. He certainly made him famous, but throughout 2002 and 2005, after they got done beating the Dudley Boys and Chronic and Booker T and Test, and we had all the Alliance and Invasion angle, we ended up getting them drafts at different brands. So The Undertaker would take on people like Lesnar, as where Kane would be busy, pretty much claiming, that he's going to become the next heel, and that he was the monster. And they tried to retcon the origin story again, but it really didn't work out as such. And it ended up being a match at WrestleMania 20 in 2004. So The Undertaker left his American badass persona that he was at that point in time, returned as the dead man after weeks and weeks and weeks of Kane trying to both entice and motivate Taker to return. He was trying to say that Undertaker's no more. I've killed him. He's done, and that's it. And I remember being there in person, seeing right the week before the go home show for that Mania, and the Undertaker, having a whole funeral procession put on for him by Kane, and us being teased by the casket and whatnot. The Undertaker was always in the psyche and headspace that was his brother's mind. And it was so cool seeing the Druids and the funeral procession live, and then there's no one in the casket, and then there is, and dead.
I went back and watched that on TV. It's amazing to see. I bet you it was a fucking fantastic in person.
It was so cool, and the way they do these special effect moments, even live, it looked fantastic. So sleight of hand as always. You see these two, though, continue on, and then they reunite in 2006. Later in the year, they take on MVP and Mr. Kennedy. And we just see these two always reuniting and then ending up in a feud. And it would kind of go in circles as such. It became cyclical. We'd see them team up, Then they'd feud, face each other. There'd be some big blow off, and then a while would go by, and their sibling rivalry would conclude at Night of Champions. So we basically get to the point where Kane becomes stronger than his older half brother, and he's going to beat him 3 times in a row. You know, Kane had been set on fire and had lost some of their biggest matches up to that point. So the Undertaker is being bolstered by the return of Paul Bearer. And with Bear by the Undertaker's time, it seemed like, these two squaring off it'd be like the Undertaker's instant way to get victory. But that was not the case. He got beat in the Hell in a Cell by a betraying Bear. The Undertaker got blinded by the urn, allowing Kane to chokeslam the Undertaker for the victory. And
that urn was always powerful.
This is him getting vengeance for the concrete burial that happened at the Great American Bash, by the way, by Paul Bearer, funny enough. But they had a buried alive match to end their feud at Bragging Rights, and this is when everyone under the sun gets involved. The Nexus comes out. They got the bulldozer. They bury the Undertaker alive, and a lightning bolt, I remember, comes down and strikes the grave at the end to let us know that we will see him again, but not for some time. It wasn't until much later on the Raw 1000 episode where everybody is surrounding Kane, and we get him to get saved by the Undertaker, and eventually
reuniting once again.
Yeah, we see these two reunite, and it probably shouldn't have happened, as we know. So the Brothers of Destruction, they team up and they take on with their Team Hell No partner Daniel Bryan. They take on the Shield on the April 8th, 2013 episode of Raw. We get to Survivor Series 2015 with the Brothers of Destruction still going strong. Take out the Wyatts and Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt in a tag team match. They shouldn't have lost, but hey, whatever. The Wyatts got beat enough at that point. But it all culminates.
Was that Undertaker's last match on Raw, by the way?
I believe that was his last Raw match of all time. And then we get the Brothers of Destruction reuniting to take on a returning Triple H and Shawn Michaels. D-Generation X proudly brings to you the former greatest tag team champions of the world. These boys were not boys anymore. They weren't even men. They were getting close to approaching senior status. And, this was the Undertaker's retirement ceremony. We thought we were going to be done with him here, but that wasn't the case. The Undertaker was not retiring. Shawn Michaels comes out of retirement. Kane is kind of heading into retirement himself, and Triple H is about to be... this match was a devastatingly awful tragedy. It was a mismatch of everything from
if my memory is
style to timing onwards.
But the only person that actually looked decent in that match was Shawn Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
He actually looked like he could still
bald and hadn't wrestled since The Undertaker and Shawn retired. Shawn at WrestleMania 26.
He at least looked good.
He had the best retirement match of all time, I would say, only to go ahead and break it due to Saudi blood money. We get Crown Jewel to be where it should be, their last, and this was just...
everyone has a price, so,
Yeah. The Undertaker didn't have many good Saudi matches. Look at him and Goldberg. That almost ended his career and broke his neck. Certainly not a good idea to take a jackhammer to someone that has 2 active concussions in the ring, but we all live and learn. Triple H and Shawn Michaels win the match, and The Undertaker and Kane were defeated despite dominating most of the match. It was weird because they had the match before where The Undertaker and Kane faced each other, and this was supposed to be like their big comeuppance against them too, but they get beat by DX, and the match was god-awful. Kane loses his mask, Triple H gets injured, and Shawn was the only one looking like he was trying. So we saw Kane.
Good.
Kane showed up alongside other legends at Survivor Series 2020 to basically say, hey, I love you, but that was it. Besides the Boneyard match, The Undertaker was done. We've not seen Kane wrestle since. He's done a few bumps here or there, but nothing of such.
Yeah, the
Kane
last
was
time
inducted
Kane,
in 2021, the class then. Undertaker was inducted in the class of 2022, and that was WrestleMania 38. So that's where we leave off with these two. I mean, covering their initial start and how they had probably one of the greatest kayfabe stories in wrestling, to the point where, as you mentioned greatly earlier, that people still to this day are unsure if they're really brothers or not. You look at Google and that is the top search result. Are Kane and Undertaker really related? So crazy that 30 years later they have that power to still make people believe or fall for it, I would say. Is there a match or moment of their rivalry that stands out to you above all else?
the moment that always will stand out the most is the Kane debut and Undertaker just like frozen in fear. He didn't have to say he was fucked. He didn't have to say he was screwed. Just the aura of the whole situation. You knew Undertaker uh, was fearing for his life, and that's something that you don't see from the Undertaker. So I think
Exactly. We
if you
went
go back
so
from the beginning,
long.
that stands out the most.
Absolutely. We went so long without seeing The Undertaker ever give an inch, never mind be taken a mile. And Taker, he goes ahead and, like you said, he's so expressionless most of the time that to have the expression on his face that, oh my God, I cannot believe we are getting this, that kind of stuff. And we're
Because
seeing
the presence
him.
of the Undertaker, like the character of the Undertaker, didn't need to see his face. He could just feel it, his brother's presence in the same ring.
Exactly. He showed fear, he showed worry, he showed concern, he showed shock, disbelief, all of it. I mean, these two, they've had a total of 37 matches. And I mean, Undertaker versus Kane, you got 8, that's house shows as well. So you got 18
What would you say
wins.
your favorite match of them is that you got to see?
Oh, I mean, they've had better matches, obviously, but that first Inferno match for me is so special. My
The Inferno
little
match, I think, will
klepto
always be.
pyromaniac self, like, if I couldn't take it, I'd burn it, and I could not get over. One of my favorite things about wrestling as a kid, especially, was the pyro. I loved the fireworks. I loved the like I said, the spectacle of it all. Indoor fireworks, sign me up. I almost set my house on fire. I burnt my living room rug by lighting sparklers so my wrestlers could make an entrance. I've had buried alive matches where I used to bring dirt in the house. I had, pyro matches where I'd set things on fire, the Inferno style. As a 9 or 10-year-old kid, it was everything to me at that point. And the Inferno match was such a spot-on spectacle. I don't know how else to explain it, but the fire, the rivalry of these two, Undertaker being my favorite, it had every element of everything that I wanted. Watching that live is forever, pun intended again, burned into my memory. That has to be my absolute favorite. And I know they had multiple Inferno matches, a couple for them. Eventually even Kane and Wyatt, that was their debut. Wyatt had a good one there. I'm trying to the Dudley Boys. I think it was also Edge and Christian at No Way Out 2001. They had a triple threat tables match. That was great as well. I believe the Brothers of Destruction had lost that match, but it was just them at their top. And especially the way the tag teams were all working together, the table spots, all of those things. That's one that really stood out to me. They had another really great match.
Cinema? People use that word all the time. The Undertaker and Kane rivalry, that's something that you can say is cinema.
Absolutely. It really is. I mean, I remember another great match they had was against Booker T and Test on SmackDown. I don't remember when it was. It was in 2001. I know it was in around late summer, but that match, please go back and check that one out. Let me double. I think it's in September. It's in my list here. Sorry, Unprofessional J. September 25th, 2001. Yeah, that one was. Whew. People felt like, oh, their stuff gets old fast and then it gets boring. I never felt that way. I don't. The way there is a lot of history. There's a lot to this rivalry, but it was never so inundated by them that I felt like it broke the plot or it took you out of it, because we would get spurts. Oh, they're fighting each other. They're killing each other. A couple pay-per-views. Now they're working together, and then they go off and do their own thing. And Undertaker's on his own solo. Kane's at his own solo story. And then they line back up. They feud again. They team up. So it wasn't a constant where they were always feuding or always teaming up. They went off and had their own great single stories too. That's why I really feel like this rivalry, this storyline, the kayfabe as a whole, stands out in my mind as strong and fresh as it does. Their Wrestlemania matches may leave a little bit to be desired, but it's still, like I said, the spectacle of it all. The Buried Alive matches, I guess I would say the worst would be the Crown Jewel outing, but that should have never happened. I do agree there. But all in all, I rank this rivalry very, very high, and we will go over their top matches and top parts of their feud and see how it was handled. Did the WWF and WWE book them properly on the next episode of Guilty or Guilt-Free? But going over today's rivalry and talking about the best, I thank you so much for going over one of the biggest inspirations in my childhood, The Undertaker. So
one
thank
of my
you,
favorite
Cody.
rivalries.
Absolutely. Cody, please let the people know where they can find you, my friend.
You can find me over on my Twitter or X at Judgment Day Era. You can find me on my Instagram at Cody_Onidi_316.
Absolutely. And on your YouTube that you're going to start uploading to as well. So
I'm going to start doing GTA gameplays. I'm going to start doing MLB The Show, Madden, all that.
Excellent. Going to be a lot of fun. Looking to see what you post over there. So people, make sure you check out all the info in the description box down below so you can be up to date with all of the content that we post over here in the Jake DeMarco universe. I have been Jake Countdown and DeMarco. You know where to subscribe to me on YouTube, but turn on that bell and hit the like button, please, as we'll be live tomorrow night after Raw to give you our coverage of everything that's going on. Looks like it's going to be a great night over there. But find me on Twitter/X, on Instagram, and on Rumble at Countdown Ended. Make sure you're checking out the latest Guilty or Guilt-Free and all that Into Somewhere has to offer. Thanks to Cody for being here, and we will see you all shortly. I hope you all stay sexy, stay cool, and enjoy your day.